If the U.S. defaulted on its gold obligations when it ended the gold standard in 1971, how do we know our gold reserves of 8,133.5 tons still exist? If they do, why aren't they audited on an annual basis like the assets of publicly traded companies? Assuming that our gold reserves still exist at Fort Knox, the value of our gold reserves based on the current price of gold is only around $300 billion. The U.S. budget deficit for the month of February 2010 alone was $220.9 billion. The bottom line is, our gold reserves, if they still exist, are nothing compared to our debts and deficit spending. The U.S. dollar would have to be devalued by 81% for our gold reserves to be worth enough to cover our projected budget deficit for fiscal year 2010 alone. The U.S. dollar would have to be devalued 98% for our gold reserves to be worth enough to pay off our national debt.
I mean, we could easily go back to a gold standard today, but they would have to revalue the gold price to something like $1 million per ounce. Then you can implement the gold standards very easily.
Instead of returning to a sound currency that is backed by gold, politicians in Washington today believe that adding new regulations will solve our problems. They believe the free market failed and the financial collapse of 2008 occurred because there weren't enough regulations.
My question to them is, what free market? The Federal Reserve sets interest rates for the entire nation, basically setting the payments. So the Federal Reserve is involved in price fixing, because we know that if interest rates are low, payments are low. If interest rates are high, payments are high.
The truth is, we haven't had a real free market in the U.S. for many decades. It is impossible to have a free market when the Federal Reserve artificially manipulates interest rates. If we had a free market, there would be no bailouts of so-called too-big-to-fail institutions. AIG would have defaulted on their credit default swap payments to firms like Goldman Sachs, Merrill Lynch, and Deutsche Bank. Wall Street would have lost on their bets and wouldn't have been able to pay out record bonuses.
The fear of failure is a great motivator, and failure itself is the best regulator. If you want to regulate the banks, let them fail. Let them know that they can fail. If we would have let Goldman and AIG and others fail, I think our country realistically would already be through the worst of it. But by saving them, by devaluing our currency, by inflating the money supply to save these banks, all we've really done is save the very institutions that have hurt this nation.
Wall Street is able to spend their newly printed dollars before they circulate. By the time those dollars trickle down to the middle class, prices rise dramatically, and the middle class sees a rapid decline in their standard of living. Americans have not yet felt the devastating effects of the Wall Street bailouts because it takes years for monetary inflation to result in price inflation. Moody's helped fuel the real estate bubble by rating CDOs as AAA that were backed by BBB or lower subprime mortgage bonds. Today, Moody's is fueling the government debt dollar bubble by rating U.S. Treasuries as AAA, even though they should be rated junk.
They slap AAA ratings on piles of subprime mortgage bonds, and then on derivatives culled from these piles. And there were AAA ratings placed on hundreds of billions of dollars of bonds that didn't just decline in value, that went to zero. So the ratings in this world end up meaning nothing.
The U.S. dollar's day of reckoning is almost here. If you compare GDP growth to our debt growth, back in 1966, $1 worth of new debt would add 90 cents to our GDP. We are now at a point where $1 worth of new debt adds nothing to our GDP and actually subtracts from it.
Do you know how angry the people are? They're losing their homes. They've lost their jobs. You have people getting out of college with nothing but worthless pieces of paper called diplomas and $50,000 in debt. They can't get a job stocking shelves at Walmart's or mowing lawns. And they're seeing the too big to fails to get bailed out. You think they're angry?
When will our country wake up and realize that inflation does not create jobs and wealth, but instead leads to unconstrained government spending and the destruction of small businesses and family values, while punishing savers and fueling the rise of dangerous ideologies that eventually lead to the complete breakdown of society? We need to go back to having mom-and-pop stores where Americans buy high-quality goods that were produced in the U.S. instead of cheap goods that were produced in China. But we can only accomplish this if the government gets out of the way and stops transferring our wealth to Wall Street through inflation.
Right around the corner from us is Fleischer's butcher shop. Famous, oh, Martha Stewart, Time Magazine, on television. You're an organic butcher that buys everything local in the Hudson Valley. Lines coming out the door in that place. You can't get in there on Saturdays and weekends. High quality. So America could go back to the greatness that it was when it goes back to quality, when it goes back to Main Street, not Wall Street. When you stop shopping and buying crap at Walmarts. And what a pleasure going into a Walmart's. It has all the aesthetics and comfort of a large self-storage unit.
The only way our country will survive hyperinflation is through education. If we can get just 20% of Americans to become educated about our economy by watching this documentary, the rest of America will try to emulate us so that we can together strive to be better than China and prevent a total collapse of the U.S. economic system.
And in our Trends Journal, we write about the 20% solution. 20% of the people will buy quality at Fleischer's. 20% of the people won't eat corporate crap. Olive Garden, that's not Italian food. 20% of the people don't shove McDonald's down their throats. 20% of the people will live up to a higher standard. 20% of the people think for themselves. Move that 20% in a focused direction. We get an America far greater than we could ever imagine.
If you would like to be kept up to date on a weekly basis with facts and truth about the U.S. economy and inflation, please sign up for the free NIA newsletter at inflation.us. NIA publishes weekly articles to its members about the economic topics that really matter, topics that aren't discussed by the mainstream media. NIA will soon be releasing an update to its review of the major online sellers of gold and silver bullion. As a member of NIA, you will also have the ability to participate in NI Answers and submit your questions about the U.S. economy and inflation to NIA for a personal response with NIA's answer to your question. NIA also highly recommends signing up for the Trends Research Institute, Trends Journal at trendsresearch.com.
Thank you for watching the documentary Melt Up. We hope that you've learned something. Please share this documentary with your friends and family, because we know that educating America, that is the second American Revolution. We know that our president, our Congress, for decades, they have ignored the Constitution. They have ignored the mandate of the Founding Fathers. And right now, whether you like it or not, whether you're a construction worker, a farmer, a stockbroker, it doesn't matter. If you're an American, you need to know the Constitution is under attack. And you need to know that you are the Constitution's last line of defense.